Welcome to the RotoWire Prospect Podcast. I'm your host, James Anderson, and got a solo show for you today. Just got back from First Pitch Arizona a few days ago. I want to give thanks to Brent Hershey, Ray Murphy, all the rest of the folks at Baseball HQ for another great weekend out in Arizona. Had a great time hanging with the presenters, the attendees, hanging by the pool, different panels, podcasts, playing wiffle ball. Made it to 3 games plus the home run derby. I got to hang out with so many of you, so that was so much fun. I presented twice, and the first presentation was advice for taking over an orphan dynasty roster, and I just wanted to shout out Brian Slack, Matt Eddy, and JT for contributing something to that presentation. I know I asked JT and Matt Eddy specifically for that. I just kind of used some stuff Brian Slack gave me for the pod we did a couple months ago for that. But if anyone wants my notes from that presentation on taking over an orphan dynasty roster, just send me a DM on Discord or Twitter or Blue Sky, and I can share that with you. But essentially, if you're rebuilding, if you're contending, you got to be patient. You got to maximize value every step of the way. The second presentation I did was about prospects for 2026, and did that with Chris Welsh, Eric Cross, Jesse Severe. We had a lot of fun. But for today's solo pod, I wanted to go through the rookies for 2026 and highlight them in order of how much I like them. For the talk at First Pitch, we did it in order of ADP, which I think is very useful. I wanted to talk about the top 25 prospects for 2026 as I see it. I'll mention the ADP as we go, but I thought that would be something worth getting in podcast form here. And I'll also be doing a article version of this top 25 prospects for 2026. If you want to check that out on rotowire.com tomorrow, Thursday, Roto 15 for 15% off a RotoWire subscription. But before I get to that top 25 prospects for 2026, I did want to answer a mailbag question from Daniel Hoffman. Not doing a mailbag until January 15th for that update, the big prospect update on January 15th. I'll do a full mailbag breaking all that down, but didn't want to leave Daniel hanging here for a few months, so I'm going to slip in his mailbag question now. And he basically wanted me to highlight any risers or fallers from my way too early top 300 redraft rankings. Recall, I put out those top 300 redraft rankings in early October every year. I also isolate the relievers, so these specific ranks aren't exact, but some guys that I think I might even have higher than on those first set of redraft rankings. I ranked Ben Rice at 60. I think he's at least someone that you should be looking at in the 4th round in 2 catcher leagues. Just seems like a pretty obvious sky-high ceiling from Ben Rice, as he'll be the Yankees' first baseman next year, eligible at catcher. Josh Naylor I ranked at 113. I think he's just a really tricky player to rank for 2026 just because he stole like more bases in 2025 than he'd stolen his entire career prior to 2025. Josh Naylor obviously be on a new team next year, and so some complications in ranking him, but I think I was pushing too hard against ranking him high based off a career year. I do think the last year will be a career year for Naylor in fantasy, but he's still a guy that should be ranked in the top 100. I already had Jack Caglione at 131 on those rankings, which is way ahead of his ADP. But I feel even better about Jack Caglione than I did then. I don't know if the ranking needs to change necessarily, because you should be able to get Jack Caglione if you're using these rankings, but just more and more confident about just how high his ceiling is in 2026. Just seems like an obvious case where the stat line in the big leagues, you can almost just kind of throw it out with Caglione. But I feel really good about being aggressive on him. I had Jason Dominguez down at 264, complicated player. Talked about him with some people this past weekend. The defense is bad, obviously. But I forgot, like, when I was doing these rankings, like, there's so much uncertainty in the Yankees outfield. There's too many ways, I think, for Dominguez to get enough playing time to pay this off. I think 264 was just too low on Dominguez. I mean, he could still go 2020 this year. Roki Sasaki, I had at 268. I think that's kind of self-explanatory. He should be higher. Again, I don't know if he should be ranked with the relievers or with the starters, but just the chance that he could be the Dodgers closer or maybe even operate as a reliever for part of the season, get stretched out. Like there's different paths to Roki Sasaki returning value, but 268 probably too low on him. Kyle Manzardo I had at 273. I think he should be a bit higher. Kind of buy more into the idea of him taking like another step in his development this upcoming year, and maybe a guy that I could see taking in the 200 to 250 range if I really need a first baseman. Colton Cowser at 280, just someone that had a kind of the year from hell last year, but I think he's a nice buy low, a nice bounce back, and 280 just a bit too low on him. One guy I didn't rank, Tatsuya Imai, who will be coming over from Japan. I think he is the top guy. I mean, got Murakami coming over as well. We've got some other position players, some other pitchers, but I think just for 2026 redraft, Imai is mispriced right now. Anyone that was able to get him around pick 300, I think that's a screaming value. And if I were in a draft right now, I mean, Imai got really pumped up at First Pitch Arizona. So I think the word is going to kind of be out on Imai that his ADP is no good anymore. I wouldn't really even reference it. I'd be kind of eyeing him around pick like 225, something like that. That might not even be high enough, but definitely should have ranked Tatsuya Imai. And then a few followers from that early top 300, Luke Keyshaw at 120 and Alejandro Kirk at 123. I just don't think there's enough viable power there from those two guys to be using that high of a pick on Keyshaw or Kirk. Definitely good roto players to have on your roster. I wouldn't be stressing out if you took them around there, but just, the projections on Keyshaw, I definitely buy the hit tool, but like he could be, he could have like kind of a Bryson Stott type of year for fantasy, and that's just not going to cut it if you're taking him in the top 150 or so. Alejandro Kirk, kind of the same thing. Like I don't want to be taking someone I think could realistically hit under 15 homers in the top 150, even if everything else is great. And then Austin Hayes, I had ranked at 265. I didn't see the Reds letting him go. Maybe I should have, but I was factoring in him playing in Great American Ballpark again with that Hayes ranking, so probably wouldn't even rank him until I see where he lands. And then that'll do it, I guess, for that question on which guys I would rank differently if I was doing that way too early top 300 again. Now, let's get to the top 25 prospects for 2026. Again, I'll be doing this as an article up on the site Thursday, November 13th, if you prefer to attack it that way. Now, I won't be ranking the guys coming over from Asia here. Don't rank them on the top 400 either. I will be adding them to the FYPD ranks, and then I will also be talking about them with Tim McLeod later this month, so don't worry about that. But yeah, again, Imai is a guy to target right now if you're currently in a draft or thinking about joining a draft. And then, I'm also only including players eligible for my list. I know at the panel in Arizona, we talked about Chase Burns a little bit, talked about Roki Sasaki a little bit, but only talking about players here who are in a big league organization and are under 50 innings pitched, under 130 at bats, but also not over that 45 days on the active roster. So the number one prospect for 2026 fantasy baseball leagues is Nolan McLean of the New York Mets. His ADP, and I'm using just the isolated Draft Champions ADP. There's currently some NFBC 50s mixed in. There's some Gladiators mixed in. I just think the draft champions ADP is sharper. I think it kind of tells us more what we're trying to figure out from this ADP. And McLean's ADP is 108.2. So essentially kind of getting drafted as an SP3. Now, McLean was always expected to end up as a pitcher, but I think it's worth noting that 2025 was his first full season as a full-time pitcher. I know it wasn't that long ago. It seems like forever ago, but he was still getting reps as a two-way player as recently as early 2024. And so I think that this is something to consider with, the projections don't necessarily know that he was trying to do two things at once there. And I think it helps explain why he's seemingly gotten better as he's climbed higher in pro ball. And that was most apparent when he dominated big league hitters over the 48 innings this past year. Had a 21.8 K minus walk and a 61% ground ball rate. McLean did. And that was better, notably. And he was great at AAA, obviously, but had a 16.4 K minus walk, 53.5% ground ball rate at AAA. So he just ratcheted it up a level. And it's just, you can't really pick any holes in McLean. The pitches, they're all there. There's not going to be any issues against righties, against lefties. Just several pitches that are like pushing plus, pushing plus. And I think it's really just how much do you discount McLean for lacking a multi-year track record in the majors. I think that's like the only thing you can really hold against him is that we haven't seen you do it for multiple years in a row. I think the price is fair. I hope it doesn't creep up into the top 100, but I suppose it could. And I don't know if I'm going to end up with McLean in any leagues, but he's definitely in the mix for me. Like if I'm looking for an SP3 in this range, I would certainly consider McLean. But I think he has to be number one, and the ADP backs that up. But we're going to the number two prospect for 2026, and I'm already disagreeing with ADP. My number two prospect for 2026 is Samuel Basallo, catcher for the Orioles. He's got the fourth highest ADP among rookies. So, I'm higher than the market on Basallo, maybe a little bit lower in the market on the guys ranked in between or going between him and McLean. But Basallo was the youngest hitter and arguably the best power hitter at AAA last year. Was also working on his catcher defense. So, you have to understand the power ceiling with Basallo is it's very, very high, and it's high right away as early as 2026. Like he could hit 30 homers as early as this season. And the fact that he only struck out 25% of the time in the majors right after turning 21, like that's just awesome. Like I could have seen him striking out 32, 33% of the time, making some adjustments. Obviously a big jump in competition from AAA to the majors, but the fact that he wasn't striking out at an alarming clip at that young age is really reassuring to me. Baltimore is going to be incentivized to play him enough to factor into the Rookie of the Year voting. I think he deserves regular at bats right away. Maybe he'll be kind of eased into regular at bats, but there's no reason for him to not play. There's no reason for him to not make the team. I think he should be going as catcher 11 right now. He's there's a big gap between catcher 10 and catcher 11. He's going behind Adley Rutschman, his teammate. He's going behind Alejandro Kirk. I think he should definitely be going ahead of both Rutschman and Kirk as catcher 11. Wouldn't push him up into the guys going like around pick 100, but given the ADP on Basallo, 177.3, if I'm looking for a catcher around like pick 150, 155, I'd jump on Basallo there. My number three prospect for 2026 is Trey Yesavage of the Blue Jays. He's got the second highest ADP when isolating draft champions ADP among these rookies. And, Steamer is a big fan. 16.0 K minus walk projection from Trey Yesavage is really good relative to the rest of the rookies. He doesn't have the deepest arsenal or the best command of the rookie starters, but he's just absolutely going to be a high strikeout starter. He's locked into the big league rotation on a good team. He had a great minor league season, but he wasn't considered kind of on this level until what he did in the postseason. So just something to keep in mind. I mean, it's much more positive to say about Yesavage than negative. I don't really have anything all that negative to say about him, other than just, things really happen fast down the stretch. Maybe I'm being like too slow to adjust to who he is at this point, but there's a lot of really good veteran starting pitchers going right behind him right now. Sonny Gray, Shane Bieber, Drew Rasmussen, Trevor Rogers, Ryan Pepio, Nathan Eovaldi, all going later than Trey Yesavage in these early DCs. I'm not saying that's wrong, but I don't think I would be taking Yesavage right at his ADP, assuming most of those guys are on the board. I'd probably see what happens, and then Yesavage is probably gone before it gets to me. So, of these top 5 or 6 guys, I think Yesavage is probably the guy I'm most likely to have 0 shares of, but it's more about just the price. Like, everyone's excited. I understand it. But going inside the top 150 on average, based like 70% based on what he did in the postseason, just seems like a lot. Number 4 prospect for 2026 redraft leagues, Bubba Chandler of the Pirates. Now, I think I've mentioned this on the pod before, but Chandler basically had one blow-up start against the Brewers, was absolutely dominant in the rest of his big league starts. But the market is very sharp. This ADP data, just it's so strong. Like, I mean, the market is sharper than most experts, I would say. And Bubba Chandler being a top 160 pick on average, going 156.4 on average in these DCs. I mean, it's just a great example of how smart everyone playing in these early leagues is. So it doesn't seem like the greatest price for significant profit there, just because like it's such a bad team. Like the Pirates have this loaded rotation. Like they go, in my opinion, they go about 10 deep in guys that I think would deserve to be starting for some team early next year. But that's not going to help Chandler get wins in his starts. And so I still think you have to project, below 10 wins, even if he's healthy all season. He's all power all the time, sits between 89 and 99 miles an hour with his 3 pitches. You could maybe argue that there's a bit more risk of injury with Chandler just because of how hard he throws, but he's also been a relative workhorse entering his age 23 season. So, I think the ratios and the strikeouts with Chandler could be right there with Yesavage, could even be right there with McLean. The wins are kind of the big difference there for our game, but I don't have any issues where Chandler's going. I just wish he was going a little later. My number 5 prospect for 2026 redraft leagues is Sal Stewart of the Cincinnati Reds. I've obviously been very high on Stewart for a long time. Probably been the highest on him for a couple of years now. So hopefully that's helped you get some shares in Dynasty. And I was initially a little surprised that the price was as high as it is this early on. 247 ADP for Sal Stewart through 12 draft champions leagues, but I don't think the price is going to come down because Steamer likes him even more than that. Steamer's got him for a 115 WRC plus, and he has the minor league track record to support that. Not surprised that the projections love Stewart. I think you could maybe get bogged down and maybe even like waste time by trying to say like, well, they've got Brian Hayes, Sal Stewart's a natural third baseman. Like, how is that going to affect his playing time? Like, just stack up the Reds hitters, see where Stewart ranks among the Reds hitters, however you want to do that. And I think you'll quickly stop worrying about the playing time situation. Like Steamer thinks it's Ellie De La Cruz, Sal Stewart, and then a huge gap to whoever their third best hitter is. I think Stewart's a better defender than guys like Noelvi Marte and Spencer Steer. Not a better defender than Brian Hayes, but Brian Hayes has had back-to-back years of being at least 20% worse than a league average hitter. So Stewart's just better. He's just better than these guys. It might not be third base. I wouldn't draft him assuming he adds third base eligibility early in the year. I think ideally you're drafting Sal Stewart as your corner infielder. You've already got a first baseman. You've already got a third baseman. Maybe he adds third base eligibility. Like maybe he adds second base eligibility. Like there's all kinds of ways that this could go. Maybe he even adds outfield eligibility, but they're going to want his bat in the lineup pretty much every day. And Stewart could also chip in. I feel it's weird saying like such a narrow range for steals. Like I think he could chip in 7 to 12 steals. Obviously the range is wider than that. We just talked about Josh Naylor stealing 30. But I think I would be projecting Sal Stewart to steal more than 7 bases for me, which is a nice little bonus for a guy who's eligible at first base. I think at 247 for the ADP on Stewart, he's still going a couple rounds later than he should be. Number 6 prospect for 2026 fantasy baseball leagues is Carter Jensen of the Royals. Jensen, catcher eligible, going at pick 238.6. So he's going about 10 spots higher than Sal Stewart. I prefer Stewart, but I also like Jensen. I think Jensen is going at about the right spot. He's going right next to JT Realmuto among the high-end catcher twos. And I think that makes sense. Like Realmuto versus Jensen, it's just kind of floor versus ceiling, and it probably dependent on the types of players you've already drafted at that point. But I definitely think Jensen should be going ahead of all the catchers he's going ahead of, arguably ahead of Realmuto, but they're basically going back to back. And, he wasn't as highly touted of a prodigy as Basallo, obviously, but Jensen's only 14 months older than Basallo, and he was definitely more productive than Basallo over the final couple months. He's really been streaky at times in the minors. He's clearly got plus power, but there have just been some cold stretches throughout his career. Really good plate discipline, though, for a young catcher with that level of power. And, kind of like Sal Stewart, a sneaky chance to get you to double-digit steals. I would project, 5, 6, 7, something like that for Carter Jensen, but certainly more than 0. And, I'm not worried about the playing time with him. Obviously, Salvador Perez is going to play, but I think it's pretty obvious to me that Jensen is one of the Royals' 6 best position players, along with Perez, Bobby Witt, Vinny Pasquantino, Jack Caglione, Michael Garcia. Like those are the 6 guys that should be in the lineup pretty much every day for the Royals. And so I think it's tough to maybe pull the trigger on a catcher, Carter Jensen at pick 238, but you look at the other catchers going around there, they've got more experience than Jensen, but they're just much less exciting. So I definitely get the price on Jensen. Number 7 prospect for 2026 redraft leagues is Connelly Early, Red Sox lefty. And there's this strange disconnect between Early's perceived value by prospect rankers, prospect aficionados versus Early's perceived value in the redraft community. It just, like, he was someone that, like, I think I was probably higher on Early than most people that rank prospects. I was getting him in these prospect mock drafts we were doing and stuff. But I think even I was high on Early, having him like around 100 on my prospect rankings when he debuted. I think a lot of people had him even lower than that, like 150, 200. So I think it's just taken a lot of people in Dynasty too long to sort of adjust their priors to how good Early is. I was hoping that there wouldn't be this much buy-in from the high stakes crowd. It's definitely annoying. But I look at the other pitchers that are going around where Early's going, just outside the top 200, and I could see myself clicking on him. There's just something in my head that's having a hard time pulling the trigger on Early at pick 200. I haven't really been faced with that opportunity yet. I've still only done the one draft, the too early meatball draft. But the reason I just have a little bit of hesitation is there's just a lot to get sorted out with that rotation. But I think, cream rises to the top, bet on skills. Like if you're kind of along those lines, I think you gotta feel like early's a fine pick there around pick 200. I really wish the price tag was just a little cheaper on him, but again, everyone's just so sharp in these drafts. Number 8 prospect for 2026, Dylan Beavers, Orioles outfielder. Beavers Steamer has him for 109 WRC plus. Like, I think this is just a case of how much is he going to sit against lefties? If he plays half the time against lefties, I think Beavers going at pick 283, basically 284. I think that's a good pick if he gets some run against lefties. I think it's just like an okay pick if he's in a hard platoon there. He's a good defender, but he's probably going to fit best in the corners. And I think he could reasonably hit 15 to 20 homers, could steal 20 plus bases. Beavers should hit for a decent batting average and a strong OBP relative to most rookies. And I think there's even like some sneaky breakout potential. I mean, if he goes 15, 20, you might call that a breakout anyways, but like, I think there's a chance that he hits like 10 more homers than anyone's expecting this year, just because he has been this guy. He's got this projectable 6'5" frame. It's always been sort of hit over power with the hope that there's more power on the way. So I wouldn't be surprised if Beavers surprised everyone and hit 25 homers this year, but he doesn't have to be worth this price. Now things get really exciting. Number 9 prospect for 2026 redraft leagues. I've got Connor Griffin of the Pirates at 9. I've got Kevin McGonigle of the Tigers at 10. Griffin versus McGonigle for 2026 was a hot debate at First Pitch Arizona. I've got them back to back, so I'm not going to say that it's like super clear cut for me, but Griffin's ADP is 288. McGonigle's ADP is 269. They're basically going a round apart. I would take Griffin over McGonigle. I just think it's very, very rare to be able to draft a player in the late 200s, early 300s, who could realistically hit 20 homers with 40 steals without hurting your batting average. Griffin's Steamer projects Griffin for a 258 batting average. Like if Griffin hits 258 and is up all year, which I think we'll get to that in a second, but if he hits 258, he's going to be worth way, way more than where he's going right now. And I think that's just a testament to just how dominant he was in the minors last year. Like he didn't even get to AAA. He was only at AA for a month or whatever. And projection systems already think he's basically a league average hitter. And if you just kind of look at the rest of the Pirates, it's kind of like Sal Stewart with Ellie De La Cruz. It's O'Neill, Cruz, and Connor Griffin, and then everybody else. So there's obviously some uncertainty in the market for him to be going as late as he is. I do think this is the cheapest you'll see McGonigle and Griffin. Like every week, I think the price is going to go up just a hair on both these guys. And then come spring training, the price could skyrocket. So this is definitely the time of year to be drafting these guys. And Griffin's upside is just paramount to me. Like I definitely expect McGonigle to hit for a higher average. I mean, if you're talking about Steamer ADPs, McGonigle's got a 14.9% strikeout rate per Steamer, which is insane for a rookie who's never played AAA. But with McGonigle, like it's possible for him to play 135 plus games in the majors and not clear 20 homers and 20 steals. Like just the upside gap between him and Griffin in the stolen base department specifically, but I think Griffin's got a higher ceiling as a power hitter this year. McGonigle could hit 20 homers too, but I think you got to chase that crazy upside with Griffin if you're going to take one of these guys. And of course you could pass on these guys too. Like there's definitely, you can win overall championships, you can win leagues without using a top 300 pick on a player who's never played in the majors. But if you want to do that, I think they're both fine values where they're going. The price is only going to go up, and I think Griffin's the better value. So that's 9 and 10. Number 11 prospect for 2026 is another shortstop, JJ Wetherholt Wetherholt probably adds third base eligibility right away. I think McGonigle could add second base eligibility. I don't think Griffin plays anywhere but shortstop once he's up. But Wetherholt, more floor than ceiling, which is kind of odd to say about a player with zero MLB experience. But I think he's their opening day third baseman. I think just having that flexibility moving from the corners to the middle, nice thing for Wetherholt. He's going at pick 261 on average, so he's going ahead of McGonigle, ahead of Griffin, ahead of Beavers, and only a round behind Sal Stewart. So I'm obviously a little bit lower than the market on Wetherholt, maybe higher than the market on guys like Griffin and McGonigle. But Wetherholt, like, I think it's kind of a like shades of Luke Keeschel, shades of Matt Shaw, where it's firmly hit over power in his early 20s. You hope he steals 20 plus bases, playing every day, hopefully hitting high in the lineup. I don't see him struggling as much as Shaw did early. I don't see him excelling as much as Keeschel did early. And I just probably won't end up with any Wetherholt because the shortstop's going after him. Like, his teammate Mason Wynn's going after him. Carlos Correa is going after him. Like, even Brooks Lee, I think, is a bit more appealing due to his positional eligibility. And then Griffin and McGonigle I prefer as well, who are going later. So just the players going behind Wetherholt, his early ADP probably means I'm not going to end up with much of him, but I do think he'll maintain an everyday job all season. I don't think he is going to move the needle too much in any one fantasy category. All right. Number 12 prospect for 2026, Jonah Tong of the Mets, ADP of 260 in these draft champions leagues. That's about 4 rounds higher than his overall ADP. Something to keep in mind. That's also the case with Connor Griffin. Like, Griffin's overall ADP is in the 300s. Jonah Tong's overall ADP is in the 300s, but they're both well inside the top 300 in these draft champions leagues. And that makes sense because, there's a chance Tong's not in the Mets opening day rotation. I think he will be, but it's understandable why people aren't taking him in like gladiator leagues, which are factoring into that overall ADP. I think Tong will pay off this price, this 260 ADP. Like, he's going to pay that off as long as he has a pretty healthy season. He was the best pitcher in the minors last year. I think he was pretty unlucky in the big leagues. So it's just all about how many innings is he going to get you. That slight frame is kind of the reason a lot of people were down on him, myself included, coming into 2025. He career high innings this past year, but still only built to like 130. So, I don't think it would shock anyone. It shouldn't shock anyone if any pitcher gets hurt, but like Tong, I think, has a higher risk of in-season injury than, someone like Payton Tolle, who's just much bigger, much stronger. But I think Tong is a value at 260 here. And the aforementioned Payton Tolle is my number 13 prospect for 2026. The two Red Sox rookie starters, Connelly early and Payton Tolle, I think have the most frustrating price tags for me, someone who would like to draft them both on my fantasy teams. I wouldn't have guessed that there'd be this much buy-in this early for Payton Tolle. He's going right around pick 300 in these draft champions leagues. I just assumed that everyone would be like, well, he's not going to be in the opening day rotation. Can't take him this high, but everyone's seeing the same stuff I am, that Payton Tolle should be really, really good if he does pitch in the rotation, and he's probably too good to spend much time at AAA in 2026. But yeah, taking a pitcher at pick 300 who he could do nothing wrong and still spend a month at AAA. It's tough. It's tough to pull the trigger, but if you're into drafting skills over roles, like, Tolle is the poster child for that, I think, this year. Because if I knew Tolle was going to be in the rotation on opening day, I think he'd be a borderline top 200 pick. I'd have him like right behind Yesavage, Bubba Chandler. So going about 100 picks higher than where he's going if I knew he was going to be in the rotation. But we can't really know that. But that frustration with Tolle is the same as with Connelly early, because I love both these guys. They should both be in a big league rotation. We don't know that they will be. We don't know for 100% certainty that they will be. But Tolle is just so good. Projections love him, even though he struggled a little bit in the big leagues. My number 14 prospect for 2026 redraft leagues is Bryce Eldridge, who's going at pick 352 on average. Eldridge is first baseman / DH for the Giants, but he's UT only entering the year. So, there's a few of these guys, like especially the hitters, obviously, like the shortstops, like Griffin, McGonigle, Wetherholt, like Sal Stewart, if you're going to save your corner spot for him. But Bryce Eldridge, I think especially, is someone that you need to think about him sort of before your draft starts. And if he's someone that you like around pick 350, I really do like him around pick 350, then I think you kind of want to make sure you don't take 2 first basemen before you take Eldridge, is, I guess, the way I'm sort of looking at it. I'm assuming he adds first base eligibility early in the year. I think him and Devers basically split the DH and first base duties. But I don't really want to have Eldridge as my 3rd first baseman, because I'm probably behind in some other positions at that point if I use my pick 350 on my 3rd first baseman. So I passed on Eldridge in my first draft champions because I did take 2 fairly early first basemen. But, he's just the fact that he's the projections have him for a strikeout rate just under 30%. That's massive to me. Like I know it doesn't sound good, but that's the type of power Eldridge has. Like he just needs to keep the strikeout range in the upper 20s and he'll be fine. Compare his strikeout rate is Steamer has him for 29.7. Steamer's got Spencer Jones of the Yankees for like 36 point something, right? So like it's not unheard of for these big name prospects with swing and miss to have these really scary strikeout rate projections. Eldridge is not in that zone. And it's because of how young he was last year. He had hard hit rates over 62% at AAA in the majors. His ground ball rates in the minors have been under 40% each of the last 2 seasons. So it's massive power potential. Like I fully expect Eldridge to have at least 1 year where he's over 40 homers. You got to wait on that first base eligibility, but just huge power potential. And if, we're in a climate right now where Kyle Schwarber, Cal Raleigh, Pete Alonso, like lots of these just power guys are going top 30, top 35 in drafts. Like Eldridge is kind of cut from that same cloth. He's available around pick 350. My number 15 prospect for 2026 is Aidan Miller, shortstop with the Phillies. And this is probably my biggest jump so far in terms of where I've got a guy ranked versus where he's going in ADP. Aidan Miller in these 12 draft champions leagues is going at pick 403 on average. He's going as the 21st prospect off the board. I've got him ranked as the 15th best prospect. So I'm 6 prospect spots higher on Miller than ADP. And it's really just about the speed and how quickly I think he's going to be up. Like with Wetherholt, like with another prospect we'll be talking about in a second here, fully expect Aidan Miller to add third base eligibility early in the season. He got off to a really slow start at AA last year. It was an aggressive assignment. He was 20, but he quickly rounded into form. And the bigger story of Miller's 2025 is that scouts were starting to throw out plus and even double plus speed grades on Miller. And coming out of the draft, speed was expected to be his least valuable fantasy tool. It was supposed to be, potentially plus hit with above average power, that type of thing. But now we're looking at a 5 category player and a player whose speed is going to drive, I think, his value in 2026. From Memorial Day on, Miller hit 284 with a 425 OBP, 10 homers, 43 steals on 56 attempts in 77 games. So 43 steals, 10 homers in his final 77 games. 8 of those games were at AAA. So I'm sure there's uncertainty about, how long is he going to be at AAA to start this year. The Phillies would love to trade Alec Boehm heading into his final year of club control. I don't expect the market to be robust on Boehm. I think the rest of the teams know how much the Phillies would like to trade him. But even so, I think Miller is a dark horse candidate to make the opening day roster. Dave Dombrowski, obviously very aggressive GM, both with trading prospects, but also with promoting the prospects he really likes. I know the Phillies just weren't willing to include Miller in any trade talks. And I think Wetherholt, there's all this buy-in that Wetherholt's on the opening day roster, and I agree he will be. But I don't think there should be a 140 pick gap between JJ Wetherholt and Aidan Miller. I don't think there's going to be like a 30 game gap in how many games they play in the big leagues this year. And I think Miller has a chance to steal twice as many bases as Wetherholt. So I really like Aidan Miller's price. He's going just outside the top 400. You can't go into the year expecting to be able to use him in April. Like, I think you should draft him assuming that you can't use him in April. And then if you can, then that's a bonus. But just the speed and then the quality of the bat, the confidence of the organization in this guy, the fact that he's probably going to be eligible at middle and corner by the All-Star break. I just think there's a lot to be excited about for Miller in 2026 Draft Champions Leagues. My number 16 prospect for 2026 fantasy leagues is Moises Ballesteros, UT only with the Cubs. I'm still looking for a scout I trust to tell me Ballesteros has a chance to stick at catcher. It's hard to find someone that's high on his catcher defense or even has it in kind of like that passable range. But even so, I just came away from my deep dive on Ballesteros higher than I expected to be on him because the bat is just so incredible, and it's easy to try to put him in a box because he's this 5'9", just already like a 20 grade athlete. But I think the bat is going to play. Like, I think he's going to be a good enough hitter that he could be like a DH and a number 5 hitter on a good playoff team someday. And he's not as underpriced as Bryce Eldridge, who's also UT only, but I could still see myself ending up with a Ballesteros share or two. And that would be under the assumption he's going to be clogging my UT spot all year. If anyone's got any inside information that he's going to be adding catcher eligibility early in the year, like, you bump him way up, but you could get into a dangerous situation if you draft him and then start assuming that you're going to be able to use him at catcher at some point. I think you should try to have 2 catchers before you take Ballesteros. But again, like, I think the bat is good enough that for most of the year, if not all the year, I think you can just leave him in your UT spot. Parker Messick of the Guardians is my number 17 prospect for 2026. Someone I used to think was very underrated in dynasty leagues. Now I think he's overrated in redraft leagues. It's, he's likely going to be in the rotation for all of 26, which I get. That's a big selling point, obviously. But, he's projected by Steamer for a 1.32 whip, under 8 strikeouts per 9 innings. So I don't think the floor is high enough or the ceiling is high enough to be taking him top 300. He's a lefty. He's a fiery, competitive lefty. He's got a bunch of pitches. So, like, I'm not ruling anything out. And, like, sometimes, like, a guy like Andrew Abbott comes along and just makes all of his prospect dorks look stupid. But I cannot abide taking Parker Messick ahead of Payton Tolle, even if Parker Messick's role is so much more secure. There's just too much of a gap there in the talent and the upside. And I would also not take Parker Messick much higher than I would take this next lefty. Robby Snelling is my number 18 prospect for 2026. 0 big league experience, but Snelling's track record at AAA this past year is up there with anybody that spent significant time at AAA. Had a 26% K- walk, had a 48% ground ball rate. I was surprised he didn't come up late September, make a big league debut just based off how well he was pitching. They just kind of continued to let him destroy international league hitters. And his development has been really choppy over the years. So I don't really think the projection systems are going to quite grasp Snelling, because the Marlins had to basically kind of fully rework his whole setup where he was at on the bump and everything like that when they acquired him in 2024 from the Padres in the Tanner Scott deal. So it's been the opposite of linear for Robby Snelling. There's been times when he was a top 100 prospect for me back when he was in the Padres system. So it's just really been all over the map. But he's still very young and certainly big league ready. I think you look at the Marlins depth chart, they always have a bunch of pitching. So it's not a given that he's in the opening day rotation, but I assume they trade Sandy Alcantara. And then we've got Ryan Weathers, Braxton Garrett, Max Meyer. Like, are all three of those guys going to be healthy and ready to take the ball every fifth day when they break camp? I have my doubts. So, he might need an Alcantara trade plus an injury to one of those guys, or just one of those guys being slower to get built up. But I think it's more likely than not Snelling's in the opening day rotation one way or another. So it's a fair price at pick 369 on Robby Snelling. I don't think it's a screaming value though. A pitcher going ahead of Robby Snelling, who I've actually got ranked behind him as my 19th prospect for 2026, is Brewers righty Logan Henderson. Projections are always going to like Henderson more than the scouts because he's this undersized righty he's got this borderline 80 grade changeup, and then that's pretty much it. But throws enough strikes. Changeup plays really well off his low 90s fastball. But 103 innings last year was actually his career high. That's how hard Henderson has had a time of building up that workload. He's just kind of always either coming back from an injury or dealing with an injury. And he dealt with a flexor strain that ended his season, and he still set 103 innings as a career high. So, I think there's just a lot of ways this could go wrong. I'll take Chad Patrick on the Brewers straight up over Henderson next year, and Patrick's going 4 rounds later. But, if Henderson is somehow able to pull, I've been wrong about plenty of guys by underestimating how many innings they're going to throw. If Henderson throws 138, 140 innings, which I think Steamer has him for 130 some innings, if he throws that many innings in the big league rotation, I think taking him just outside the top 300 will look pretty good. But I would take the under on the innings that Steamer has Henderson for. And I even think it's worth just keeping an eye on Henderson during spring training. I know that the Brewers said he's got a clean bill of health, but it's still a flexor strain. Those lead Tommy John surgery plenty, so could easily re-injure that elbow in spring training. Another player I'm a little lower on than the market is my number 20th prospect for 2026, and that's Chase DeLauter, outfielder with the Guardians. DeLauter is going around pick 320 in these early DCs. He's never played more than 57 games in a regular season. I mean, that's kind of incredible for a position player who's been in pro ball for 3 years. Lower body injuries were the culprit his first 3 years in pro ball, 2022 through 2024. And he's 6'3", 235. So lower body injuries on a guy like that, it's obviously a major concern. Last year, it was just a sports hernia and a broken hamate that cost him all the time. So, if you want to go glass half full, you could say that, well, it wasn't lower body injuries last year. He technically finished the year healthy, playing in the postseason after not debuting in the big leagues during the regular season. And he's always been productive at the plate, even amid all this missed time, amid all these injuries. He's always been a productive hitter. But he's not going to run, right? He's got 1 steal in 70 games of full season ball since 2024. And I think the lower body injuries, just his size, it's what's the benefit in having this guy run when he can barely stay in the lineup as a hitter and outfielder? So at best, you're looking at 4 category value. But he could also sit against lefties, right? Maybe not, just given the Guardians' depth and everything, but they got guys like John Kenzie Noel, Jonathan Rodriguez, who should be able to mash lefties in theory. And I look at the outfielders going after Chase DeLauter, like Jesus Sanchez, Gavin Sheets, Dominic Canzone. Those might not be that exciting names, but I think all those guys will just be in strong side platoon roles all season. maybe even play some against lefties. And they're going to play more games than DeLauter. And I don't think the production is going to be really any lower for rookie season Chase DeLauter. So not going anywhere near him at pick 320. My number 21 prospect for 2025 is Andrew Painter of the Phillies. He's going around pick 357. This is basically just a blind bet on the 2022 version of Painter still being in there somewhere. And it probably is still in there somewhere. The 2025 version of Painter won't do us any good. So we can't have him just be the same guy as he was last year. It's not that his stuff was terrible or significantly worse than it was back in 2022, but he just wasn't very sharp. He wasn't very consistent, and probably just didn't trust his stuff that much. There's an argument that Andrew Painter is basically like as young and as famous as you could be before getting Tommy John surgery for the first time, because he was 19. Well, he might have been 20 when he got the surgery, but he was coming off his age 19 season, dominates 3 levels of the minors, is consensus an elite pitching prospect, but he's just 19. So he's only been pitching like in this type of competitive environment for a few seasons. So I think it's a viable hypothesis. I think that it might just take this younger pitcher a little bit longer to kind of return to sort of the peak of his powers after the surgery. You could definitely find examples where that wasn't the case, like a Jose Fernandez back in the day. But this is going to be a spring training must-watch TV type of thing with Painter, because I think we should know after his second or third Grapefruit League start whether or not this is going to be an exciting Andrew Painter year or not. And the Phillies will not delay his ascent into the big league rotation, right? Like as soon as they think Painter's ready, I think he's going to be up, but it's really kind of just a blind bet on him being a significantly better pitcher than he was in 2025. So I'm a little lower on Painter than the market. So we've got 4 prospects left. They're all hitters. This isn't, I wouldn't say it's like exactly a strict, like I would take all 4 of these rookies before I would take any other rookie that I haven't mentioned yet. But I thought it was good to just have it be 4 high upside hitting prospects that I think are going to spend a bunch of time in the big leagues. Just guys that I wouldn't want to miss out on, and guys I think we need to talk about here. Number 22, I've got Colt Emerson, shortstop eligible prospect for the Mariners. I would assume he would be coming up to play third base every day. And so I think just like with Wetherholt, just like with Aidan Miller, Colt Emerson is probably shortstop, third base eligible after a few weeks in the big leagues. The redraft crowd, even the redraft crowd seems to know that Emerson's game isn't tailor-made for fantasy. His ADP is 462. So, I'm quite a bit higher on him than the market. But I just think this is a phenom who is getting better as the season went on last year. And I look at the Mariners depth chart and it's just like, that's Colt Emerson's spot. Like they don't have a guy there. They're not going to block him when he's this ready. So I think he can make the team out of camp. I wouldn't expect them to do that, but I at least think Emerson's up sometime in the first half. And over his last 62 games last year, split between high A, double A, and triple A, Emerson slash 307, 403, 508. So 300, 400, 500 with a strikeout rate below 18%, 9 homers and 9 steals in those 62 games. So I think he's pretty much ready for big leagues. There's nobody in his way at third base on the depth chart. I think there's shades of Jackson Merrill here where everyone knew Merrill's hit tool was special, but his game power and his speed in that big rookie season were just better than anyone would have projected. I think maybe you would bet on the power showing up that quickly just because of how good the hit tool was, but no one was projecting Jackson Merrill to steal 20 bases as a rookie. And, I think Emerson, the bat is so good. It's trending in such a impressive direction. And again, that the depth chart, it's just that's Colt Emerson's spot at third base. So going at pick 462, I just love that, and love that he's probably going to be corner middle eligible. My number 23 prospect for 2026 is Carson Benj, outfielder for the Mets. And obviously David Stearns made waves yesterday by saying that Benj has a chance to make the team out of spring training. You know, we rarely hear president of baseball ops go on record with a specific prospect by name and say that they could make the team out of spring training. You know, I think this is bad news for those who already assumed that that would be the case or could be the case. And it's good news for those who already drafted Benj at his outdated ADP. You know, his ADP right now through 12 DCs is 538. But you can throw that out based on what Stearns said. I'm sure that there's, in any DC that's currently going right now, I'm sure there's multiple people that are like, all right, I'm going to jump Benj right here at like pick 420 or whatever. So throw out Benj's ODP or ADP, but you know, I think you look at their depth chart, and that's why I was interested before Stearns' comments, because they clearly need outfielders to come from somewhere. And I think if you just look at what Benj realistically could do and what Dylan Beavers could realistically do next year, it could actually be very similar. And I think you could see both of them sitting against some lefties. Both of them have the tools to flirt with 2020, even in a limited role where they're sitting against some lefties. And I think Benj and Beavers could both log pretty solid OBPs. I don't know about the batting average, probably more in the like 240 range, but you know, long term, I've comped like Benj over the next like 3 to 4 years. I think he could be very similar to like Marlins Christian Yelich. It's always, whenever I like mention Christian Yelich as a comp, I like gotta say not the 2 MVP years with the Brewers, because those just were an anomaly. But you know, before that, Yelich was this high average, high OBP, you know, a little bit of power, a little bit of speed, tons of runs. Like I think that's what Benj can be. And he was also a two-way player until a couple of years ago too. So I mean, I think he's kind of just coming into his own as a full-time position player. My number 24 prospect for 2025, Joshua Baez, outfielder of the Cardinals. So Baez got top billing in my rookies to target in Draft Champions article from a month ago, but I think he's worth mentioning again here. You know, we're talking about an outfielder in Baez. Actually, I'll lump in my number 25 prospect too. Ryan Waldschmidt of the Diamondbacks is my number 25 prospect. So Baez and Waldschmidt, 2 righty hitting outfielders who haven't played at AAA yet, but dominated AA in very impressive fashion in both cases. No concerns with the strikeout rates that either guy posted there. You know, Steamer doesn't know that Baez was just kind of lost in the wilderness for a year and a half earlier in his pro career before kind of redoing his swing after ending up on the development list over a year ago. So he's been a different player since he came back from that, but he's basically performed like a top 25 prospect ever since then. And Baez loves to run. Like that's the separator between Baez and Waldschmidt. Like I think Baez could steal 30 plus bases. Waldschmidt, probably you're hoping for like 15 steals as a rookie, but they both have big time power long-term. Both could be plus power hitters with double-digit steals. Baez, it's a lot of it is just his great jumps and his desire to steal bases. You know, I don't think he's any faster than Waldschmidt necessarily, but you know, the fact that Steamer's got Baez for a 260 or 26.8% strikeout rate without having any time at AAA under his belt with his massive power potential. Like for those who don't know, if you're just looking at Joshua Baez's minor league home run totals, you might think he's just got like average power, above average power. Like Baez, when he was drafted out of high school, like power was the one thing he definitely had. And if you see some of his tape measure shots, like he still has that power. So he's just so tooled up. There's nobody standing in his way in right field there. So it's just a question of how aggressive the new regime is going to be with promoting him. But Josh Baez, ADP, 544 right now. So just love that. And then Waldschmidt, his ADP is 654. So he's going 100 picks after Baez, but I don't see any reason why Waldschmidt wouldn't be up sometime in the first half of 2026. Again, like he's got a top 6 WRC plus on the Diamondbacks per steamer without playing a game at AAA. Like he's a better real life player than guys like Lourdes Gurriel. He's definitely a better real life player than like Pavin Smith or Jake McCarthy. Like there's all kinds of guys that Waldschmidt is going to jump over in that org early in 2026. So those are my top 25 prospects for 2026. I did just want to mention a couple guys that I'm a little lower on, or at least I don't think you should be drafting where they're going right now. Travis Bazzana, second baseman for the Guardians, obviously was the number 1 overall pick a couple of years ago. He is the number 22 rookie by ADP. He's going right after Aidan Miller. I think that's a really a mispriced ADP on Bazzana. I think he should be going like 100 picks later. And I think what's happening is like the second baseman available in the early 400s, they're just so uninspiring. It's just like a bunch of guys where it's like, oh, that guy kind of sucks. That guy kind of sucks. So like, I understand why people are looking for someone with a bit more pop, a bit more upside there. But my response to that is you should get your second baseman earlier or later. Like there's plenty of guys where once you get to like pick 500, it's like, oh yeah, that guy's a cool value here. Just try to not be chasing upside at second base in those early 400s. Bazzana, like, you know, it's just a blind bet on his pedigree. It's just like, this guy was the number 1 overall pick. I'm taking him because of that. The projections don't support it at all. 85 WRC plus from Steamer. It's just way, way worse than like any of the guys we're talking about. And he's just not, he doesn't have, like, Bazzana's not going to go 2020 this year, even in like a best case scenario. He would go like 14, 17 or something like that. So don't get the price on Bazzana. And then, you know, I don't like the price on Daniel Espino. Like he's going in the mid 600s, but at least with him, there's a slight chance you could get something. There's 0% chance you're getting anything from Travis Sikora in draft champions leagues. He's recovering from Tommy John surgery. Like he just, there's no way. And this same thing happened with Ricky Tiedemann last year. Like the NFBC, if you click on these prospects who've never played in the big leagues, they're not going to show you the minor league news. You know, subscribe to RotoWire for that, Roto 15, if you want 15% off a RotoWire subscription. But like you have to do more than just click on the NFBC player box before you're selecting these guys. Travis Sikora is not going to pitch in the majors next year. So don't take him. He's already been taken in 8 drafts. Really not sure how people make that mistake, but yeah, if you ever have any questions, if you're ever on the clock in one of these DCs and you just have a quick question about a rookie, you can try me on Discord, rotowire.com/chat. And again, the article version of this will be up on the site tomorrow, November 13th.